morning and realizing that the life you've been living isn't truly yours. Imagine that every decision you've made, every belief you've held, and even your inner world has been shaped by invisible forces. How much of your identity really belongs to you, and how much of it is a product of others, of traditions, of social norms, and of the subtle suggestions engraved into your subconscious? How many times have you felt like you were just playing a role in a script written by society? How often have you pushed your true self into the background, accepting an imposed identity just to belong and be approved? According to Jung, real life only begins when you find yourself. But what does it really mean to find yourself? Is it simply about discovering who you are, or is it a far deeper and more transformative journey? Let's explore this question together, because the insights you're about to learn will reveal why so many people never truly find themselves and how you can, especially the final part, which may completely change the way you see yourself and the way you interact with the world. Carl Jung is one of the most important figures in modern psychology. He went beyond traditional frameworks of the mind and explored the hidden depths of the unconscious. For him, psychological development rested on a process he called individuation, the shedding of identities imposed by society and the past in order to reach the true self. Yet most people, even when they feel this inner restlessness, ignore it and keep moving forward. They mistake external approval, success, or fitting in for happiness, but deep down, a part of them is always searching. As Jung said, life really begins when you find yourself. But finding yourself isn't nearly as simple as it sounds. From the moment we're born, we're given names, identities, and roles. Society, family, culture, and environment teach us which behaviors are acceptable and which will be punished. This process is so slow and subtle that most people never question it. Over time, we learn to suppress the parts of ourselves that aren't deemed acceptable. Think back to your childhood, moments when you expressed yourself freely but were met with criticism. Maybe a dream of yours was mocked. Maybe you were told you were too sensitive. Maybe some of your desires were labeled as inappropriate. Slowly, you began to hide those parts of yourself. And in doing so, you built what Jung called the persona, the mask you present to the outside world. The persona helps us function socially, build relationships, and gain approval. But sometimes we lose touch with our true selves. We begin to live as if the mask itself is who we really are. To truly find yourself, you must ask, who am I really? Is the person I am today shaped by my own choices or by external influences? According to Jung, those who seek external approval often care too much about what others think, and as a result, suppress their authentic selves to conform to societal expectations. This blocks self-understanding and inner peace. Most people live not for themselves, but for others. They measure their successes, relationships, and dreams through the eyes of society. But this only creates emptiness and dissatisfaction, because the soul can never find peace living under a false identity. Yet beneath the persona lies something much deeper and more authentic, the true self. And here's where the other side of the coin comes in. Jung believed in the shadow, all the fears, desires, vulnerabilities, and even untapped potential that we've suppressed. The shadow isn't only made up of our negative traits, it also contains hidden strengths and talents we've never acknowledged. But facing the shadow is uncomfortable for most people. After all, confronting repressed emotions, fears, and traumas is not easy. What we suppress builds up in the unconscious and eventually leaks out in ways we don't want. For example, when someone encounters an extremely aggressive or arrogant person, they might find it unbearable. But perhaps they themselves carry suppressed anger within, and since they can't consciously accept it, they react strongly when they see it reflected in others. Jung called this shadow projection. Think about it. Have you ever instantly disliked someone without even knowing why? Or found yourself unable to tolerate someone but couldn't explain the reason? That's often because the traits that bother us in others are actually hidden parts of our own shadow that we refuse to face. Here's the key. Psychological growth isn't about destroying the shadow, but about integrating it. Accepting the parts of ourselves we've rejected is the key to profound inner freedom and strength, because everything repressed in the unconscious eventually pushes back, manifesting as anxiety, self-sabotage, repetitive mistakes, and a chronic sense of emptiness. Jung said that one of the most important steps in finding yourself is facing and embracing your shadow. When we accept our flaws, fears, and suppressed parts, we achieve inner wholeness. But here's the problem. Most people avoid listening to their unconscious. We constantly keep ourselves busy, scrolling through social media, binge-watching shows, glued to our phones. Why? Because we're afraid of turning inward. Silence forces us to face our inner questions. Yet no matter how much we run, the unconscious keeps speaking to us. According to Jung, one of the main ways we can access it is through dreams. Dreams are messages from the soul. Creative expressions, art, writing, music, are also doorways into the unconscious. If we want to truly know ourselves, we must listen to these whispers. Jung also believed that every human carries universal patterns, what he called archetypes. Archetypes are symbols of the collective unconscious. They show up repeatedly in myths, fairy tales, and dreams. In reality, they are reflections of our inner world, the hero's journey, the wise mentor, the dark enemy. These figures represent our inner psychological process. For example, the hero archetype symbolizes the fighter within us. But every hero must eventually face a shadow. Look at your own life. Have you ever wanted to change but felt an inner resistance? Have you ever hesitated to take a step forward because of fear? That's your inner hero battling your shadow. Most people avoid the shadow, but true transformation begins only when we accept it. Someone who truly finds themselves begins to break free from society's imposed molds. They stop living for the expectations of others and start living by their inner values. But this journey isn't easy. Going against societal norms can mean loneliness, rejection, or being misunderstood. Life isn't about reaching a fixed destination, it's an ever-deepening journey. And that journey takes courage. Discovering your true self requires breaking free from external expectations, diving into your unconscious, and facing your darkest aspects. But at the end of this process lies freedom, because real life begins when you find yourself. Carl Gustav Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, had a radical perspective on human development. He believed the first few decades of life were just preparation. Life, he said, truly begins at 40. Up until then, you're only doing research. Modern society often sees the 40s as a midlife crisis, a decline, or the end of youth. Popular culture ties this period to rash decisions, nostalgia, or identity struggles. But to Jung, these years weren't an ending. They were the beginning of an awakening. A person can only truly face their own self and begin genuine individuation at this stage. We can think of the early periods of life as a time of exploration. In childhood and youth, we adopt the patterns we receive from family, environment, and society. On one hand, we try to understand who we are, while on the other, we strive to fulfill the roles society expects of us. We search for success, happiness, and meaning in the external world. Career, status, financial gain, and relationships take priority during this phase. But according to Jung, most of the identities we form during this time are superficial and incomplete. We get used to silencing our inner voice and wearing the persona, our social mask, expected of us by society. However, after a certain point, these masks start to feel too tight, and that's when the real questioning begins. As people approach the age of 40, they often realize that the identities built in the first stage of life no longer bring them satisfaction. Goals that once seemed so important, climbing the career ladder, achieving status, earning social approval, start to lose their meaning. The true self, meaning suppressed emotions, desires, and needs, begins to surface. This is where the process Jung calls individuation comes into play. So what exactly is individuation, and why is it so important? Carl Jung believed that human life is divided into two main stages: the preparation phase and the process of true individuation. The first stage, the first 30 to 40 years of life, is a process of adapting to the external world, shaped by the values we inherit from family, society, and our surroundings. During this time, our greatest priority is building a success, starting a securing. In other words, we focus on becoming. However, Jung argued that this stage is not the beginning of real life. but merely a preparation period. The identities we adopt during this phase are mostly determined by external factors and do not fully reflect our inner world. As people approach 40, they often feel a sense of dissatisfaction with life. The goals that once mattered, career, social status, material wealth, no longer hold the same allure. This is because these achievements do not actually guarantee inner peace or true happiness. Instead, this stage marks the beginning of a new process. Individuation. Individuation is the journey of truly meeting oneself, exploring the inner world, and integrating all aspects of the self. This means not only embracing our strengths and successes, but also accepting our fears and the parts of ourselves we've suppressed. One of the key concepts in Jungian psychology, the shadow, lies at the heart of this process. The shadow represents the aspects of ourselves we repress into the unconscious, traits rejected by society or by the individual. During childhood and youth, in order to adapt to external expectations, we often deny parts of who we are. For example, if a society glorifies strength and power, an individual may suppress their own vulnerability and fear of failure. But these repressed emotions don't disappear. They remain alive in the unconscious and continue to influence life in hidden ways. The age of 40 becomes the time to face these shadows. This confrontation is not easy. People often avoid seeing their weaknesses, fears, and unfulfilled desires. But according to Jung, without going through this process of integration, it is impossible to become a truly free and whole individual. One must embrace not only the traits that are socially accepted, but also those that have been denied. Doing so allows the individual to resolve inner conflicts and live a more authentic life. At this stage, however, society's pressures come into play. Modern culture typically frames middle age as a period of decline, regression, or crisis. Media and popular culture are filled with cliches about the midlife crisis, people buying sports cars, making sudden career shifts, or turning to cosmetic surgeries. But Jung argued that these behaviors are actually attempts to escape the process of true individuation. Instead of finding inner peace and fulfillment, the individual may try to regain the external successes of youth. Yet this usually leads to a temporary and unsatisfying cycle. From Jung's perspective, middle age is not a crisis, but an opportunity for transformation. This transformation often begins with deep inner questioning. Who am I really? How do I want to live the rest of my life? What truly makes me happy? But the answers to these questions are not found in the external world. They are hidden within the individual's inner world. Jung believed that in this stage, a person must learn to listen to their own voice and free themselves from external expectations. Life is no longer shaped by outer success, but by the search for inner fulfillment and meaning. A crucial concept Jung associated with this process is the persona, the roles and masks individuals adopt within society. Being a parent, a leader, or a professional, all of these are parts of the persona. But as one reaches middle age, these roles no longer fully define the individual. At some point, one realizes there is an identity beyond these masks. That is when the true search for self begins. This transformation is also supported by neuroscience. Research shows that as people age, the brain's emotional regulation becomes more balanced. While youth is often marked by competitiveness, ambition, and an obsession with external success, middle age tends to bring a more mindful and meaning-focused way of life. People react less impulsively, reflect more deeply, and consciously shape their lives. This aligns with Jung's description of wisdom and inner harmony emerging in later years. For some, this process can be painful. Leaving behind old identities, relationships, and goals can be challenging. But Jung believed that without this transformation, true freedom is impossible. As psychologist Brené Brown also points out, what we call midlife is often a process of unraveling. A person lets go of who they thought they were supposed to be and begins to face their true self. This unraveling may bring big life changes, tough decisions, and periods of uncertainty. But it is also an extraordinary opportunity for growth and renewal. Ultimately, from Jung's perspective, turning 40 is not an end but a new beginning. A person gains the chance to shape the rest of their life not according to society's expectations, but according to their own inner values and search for meaning. This process allows one to discover the true self and integrate all aspects of being. For Jung, success and status should give way to inner peace and authenticity in this stage of life. So if you find yourself at this point, try to see it not as a crisis, but as an opportunity, because perhaps, for the very first time, you truly have the chance to be yourself. Since the beginning of time, humanity has sought to understand itself and discover who it truly is. Philosophers, scientists, and thinkers have delved into the depths of the human soul, attempting to uncover its nature. Among those who explored this labyrinth most deeply was Carl Gustav Jung. Jung approached psychology not only at the level of the individual mind, but also from cultural, mythological, and collective unconscious perspectives, earning recognition as one of the greatest theorists in modern psychology. The reason Jung's ideas remain so influential is not only because they are grounded in scientific thought, but also because they draw upon diverse cultures throughout history. Inspired by Eastern philosophies, mythology, and religion, Jung sought to decode the universal patterns of the human soul. His insights left a profound mark not only in psychology, but also in literature, cinema, art, and popular culture. Many of the movies we watch, the books we read, and even modern theories have been shaped by him. Some of Jung's most important concepts about the human psyche continue to serve as powerful guides in understanding ourselves. Ideas such as the shadow, the persona, and the Peter Pan syndrome remain key to the journey of self-discovery. According to Jung, every human being has a repressed side, one rejected by society and often denied by the self. He called this side the shadow. But can a person truly be completely good or completely evil? Is it possible to define someone as entirely good or entirely bad? Jung believed that every individual carries a dark side within, and the more it is repressed, the more powerful it grows in the unconscious. One of the most striking examples of Jung's concept of the shadow can be seen in the ordinary men who took part in the Nazis' mass killings of Jews. In his book, Ordinary Men, Christopher Browning describes the Reserve Police Battalion 101, showing how ordinary citizens, not blindly devoted to Nazi ideology, could still become perpetrators of atrocities under certain circumstances. This illustrates how people can unleash their shadows when external pressures align. Jung argued that for a person to truly be good, they must acknowledge the potential for evil within themselves. Only by recognizing and confronting one's own dark side can one move toward enlightenment. This concept has countless reflections in literature and popular culture. Tyler Durden in Fight Club embodies the protagonist's shadow. Walter White's transformation into Heisenberg in Breaking Bad can be seen as surrendering to his shadow. In gaming, Kratos from God of War represents a figure unable to control his rage, consumed by his shadow. These works portray humanity's timeless struggle with its own darkness. Another crucial concept Jung contributed to psychology is the persona. The persona refers to the roles and masks individuals adopt in society. Human beings are inherently social, and in order to function within their environment, they must act in ways that meet certain rules and expectations. This is where the persona comes in. A person may act one way with family, another at work, and yet another with friends. Each setting comes with its own norms. If someone completely rejects these rules and expresses their inner self without filter, they risk being excluded by society. But when these adaptations go too far, the individual begins to lose their authentic self. Jung saw over-identification with the persona as a serious danger. If a person tries too hard to conform to society's expectations, they may forget their true self and become only what others want them to be. This leads to the suppression of the inner world and entrapment in a false identity. For instance, a teacher who only speaks from the textbook without ever engaging authentically, or a leader who fully dissolves into their public role and denies their private self, are both examples of being consumed by the persona. The persona is not only a tool for adaptation, but it can also be used as a tool for manipulation. Throughout history, many people have created false identities to gain the trust of society. One of the most striking examples of this is the infamous serial killer Ted Bundy. Bundy was known as handsome, polite, charismatic, and intellectual. People around him admired his courteous manners and trusted him. Yet this was nothing more than the persona he created to be accepted by society. In reality, Bundy was someone entirely different on the inside, a cold-blooded killer and a ruthless criminal. This shows that sometimes the persona is no longer just a tool for adapting to social life, but something used for entirely different purposes, deceiving and exploiting people. However, the persona is not always a negative concept. To a certain extent, it is necessary in order to be accepted in society and to maintain social life. A person cannot constantly reveal their inner world in social settings, as this could cause difficulties in relationships. The greatest challenge for an individual is to maintain balance between the persona and the true self. If a person uses the persona only to secure a place in society while completely forgetting their inner world, defining themselves only as who society wants them to be, they eventually begin to lose their true identity. That is why, as Jung emphasized, the persona should remain merely a mask and never turn into a prison that hides the real self. Another important concept Jung explored is the Peter Pan syndrome. This term describes a situation where an adult, though physically mature, continues to act like a child and refuses to take on the responsibilities of life. Today, one of the psychological reasons many adults still behave like children is this very syndrome. Those with Peter Pan syndrome may have grown physically, but psychologically, they continue to behave like children, avoiding responsibility. Instead of facing life's challenges, they turn to entertainment and immediate pleasures. According to Jung, one of the biggest factors behind this condition is overly protective parents, especially the devouring mother figure. Such a mother excessively possesses her child, trying to shield them from life while actually preventing their development. She doesn't allow them to stand on their own feet, won't let them leave home, refuses to teach them responsibility, and ensures they remain for life. This way, develop a fear of growing up. Taking responsibility feels frightening to them, so they avoid stepping into adulthood. The best-known example of this syndrome is J.M. Barrie's famous character Peter Pan, the boy who never grows up, who rejects responsibility, and who lives in an imaginary place called Neverland. He has escaped the real world and refuses to assume any adult obligations. But while this might be acceptable in fairy tales, in real life, refusing to grow up prevents a person from realizing their potential. Jung argued that growth requires sacrifice. One cannot become a true adult without giving up the comforts of childhood and the protection of parents. In the modern world, Peter Pan syndrome has become increasingly widespread. People who see life only as a source of fun, who constantly procrastinate, and who avoid struggle are essentially individuals who refuse to grow. According to Jung, such people experience an internal conflict. On the one hand, they want to be free, but on the other hand, they cannot let go of the comforts of childhood. Yet true freedom is impossible without abandoning this comfort. To grow up means to take responsibility, to face challenges, and to strive for self-development. Therefore, individuals suffering from Peter Pan syndrome must learn to stand up to life's difficulties, resolve their inner conflicts, and confront the real world. In conclusion, the concepts of the persona and Peter Pan syndrome, as discussed by Jung, revealed two of the most fundamental truths of human psychology. On the one hand, people wear a mask to adapt to social life, while on the other, they may retreat into childhood to avoid growing up. Yet true freedom and maturity can only be achieved by balancing the persona with the authentic self, and by overcoming Peter Pan syndrome to embrace the responsibilities of adulthood. As Jung said, one cannot reach enlightenment by deceiving oneself, but by recognizing and bringing awareness to their darker sides. In his studies on understanding the human soul, Carl Jung argued that an individual must explore their inner world. Instead of repressing their shadow aspects, a person must face them. By making them conscious, Jung emphasized that enlightenment does not come simply from wanting to be good, but from accepting the darkness within ourselves. In conclusion, Jung's ideas can guide us not only in the fear, but in myth serve as an important compass in an individual's journey of self-discovery, in questioning the masks we wear in society, and in confronting the shadow within. Understanding the human soul is not an easy, yet the word can shed light on this journey. Let us remember, we achieve enlightenment by making the darkness conscious. How many times in your life have you avoided facing your fears? How many times have you suppressed your anger, disappointments, or the parts of yourself you felt ashamed of, pretending they didn't exist? Human nature tends to deny its dark side and display only what is socially acceptable. But the famous psychiatrist Carl Jung argued that these repressed aspects, what he called the shadow, actually contain our greatest potential. According to him, the key to finding our true purpose in life is not only to embrace our light, but also to accept our shadow. The concept Jung called the shadow archetype includes all the parts of ourselves we don't want to admit, the traits society disapproves of, or the qualities we believe we lack. But there is a profound secret hidden here. These suppressed aspects are actually gateways to our greatest potential. Emotions like anger, ambition, fear, or jealousy, though often seen as negative, can, if channeled correctly, transform into creativity, confidence, and powerful inner growth. So what does it really mean to discover your shadow? Is it only about facing your fears, or could it also be a way to unlock your life's greatest opportunities? Facing your shadow not only helps you understand yourself more deeply, but can also reveal your true life purpose. In this video, we explored Jung's concept of the shadow, the process of individuation, and how this journey connects to your ultimate meaning in life. Jung believed that for a person to truly grow, they first need to bring these repressed aspects into consciousness, because an unrecognized shadow continues to influence and shape one's life. The shadow doesn't just hold weaknesses, it can also contain suppressed strengths from different stages of life. For example, someone taught that showing anger is unacceptable might grow into an adult who suppresses everything, unable to defend themselves. Yet when used constructively, anger can be a source of strength and determination. Similarly, a child whose creativity was dismissed may struggle to express themselves as an adult and feel unfulfilled. This is why Jung taught that confronting the shadow reveals not only hidden weaknesses, but also untapped potential. To recognize the shadow, Jung suggested paying attention to the flaws we notice in others. Often, what bothers us most in people is simply a reflection of what we have repressed within ourselves. If someone's selfishness triggers you strongly, perhaps you've buried your own selfish tendencies. If another person's cowardice frustrates you, maybe you're avoiding your own fears. Human beings interpret much of the outside world through the lens of their inner reflections. To truly know yourself, Jung insisted, you must treat the faults you see in others like a mirror. However, Jung's solutions for psychological healing don't stop with shadow work. In his view, the deepest human need is to find meaning in life. Without meaning, people often seek escape from anxiety and depression in the wrong places. Some turn to substance abuse, others chase endless relationships, while many pursue fame, money, or social media validation. Yet none of these can truly fill the inner void. True freedom is not about escaping responsibility, but about accepting the consequences of your choices. The eternal child archetype within us reminds us of the importance of curiosity, imagination, and passion. But how we use this energy determines the direction of our lives. It's not enough to dream, we must take the steps to bring those dreams into reality. That is what true growth means. As Jung emphasized in the process of individuation, wholeness is only possible by balancing these two opposing forces. This integration allows a person to create a life that is both free and deeply rooted in meaning. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who might benefit from it.